and welcome. We'll give it a few more minutes until we get started. Let a few more people get in here. Well, hello and welcome to the second session of the Arizona Association for Economic Development's Economic Development 101 for elected officials. I am Carrie Kelly, the Executive Director of AAD, and I'm glad you could join us as we discuss the workforce and talent pipeline in Arizona and its importance in economic development. The mission of AAD is to serve as Arizona's unified voice for responsible economic development, and our three pillars are educate, advocate, and collaborate. We hope you'll find this series educational, and we're excited to have this opportunity to collaborate with you. I'd also like to thank SRP as our series sponsor, and that allows us to produce this event at no cost to you. At this time, I'd like to send it over to our moderator of today, Kevin Gillette. He is the Director of Business Development at the University of Arizona Tech Park. Kevin, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. As Carrie said, welcome to our second session for Economic Development 101 for elected officials. So got a couple of slides I want to go over real quick with you, just kind of set the table. Then we'll get to introducing our panelist, and we'll go from there. As a reminder, if you have questions throughout any part of the presentation, if you can just put them in the chat box, and we will get to that towards the end of our session. So just a kind of a brief, definition of what is workforce development. I think that term is thrown around quite a bit, and hopefully after today, you're going to come away with a deeper understanding of what that means. But essentially, it really is about helping businesses find their employees and the human resource needs and demands that they have for their businesses to be successful. Next slide. So what is the implication when we talk about this economic transformation? And you can see on the slides there that a lot of companies now, they go where the talent is. And I think that that's why workforce development has been put in the forefront for a long time. But I think even now, as you start seeing more technological advances, things like that talent attraction is the key for communities to be successful. Next slide. And so kind of the system that we talk about, what is workforce development? I've been in presentations where they say, workforce development almost begins in first grade when you start teaching, critical thinking skills, things like that. But it really is, it takes the community across K through 12, community and technical colleges and universities. And I think here in Arizona, we are blessed to have some very strong partners in all of these silos. So very excited to have this presentation for you all today. And we have three wonderful subject matter experts on this. And again, hopefully you're going to come away with a better understanding and ways that you can be a champion in your community for economic development and workforce development. So before we get into kind of the intro and the program, we're going to do a quick polling question. And if you can put your answers there in the chat box, we'll gather those. But the question is, well, there it is. There's your poll. It pops right up for you. Where would you rank your understanding of workforce development on a scale of 1 to 10? So with that, I'm going to jump right into our first presenter. Joel Millman is with the Pinal County Economic and Workforce Development Department. And as when you came in, if you look in the chat room, you can click on each of the presenters' bios to get a better understanding of their depth of knowledge. But Joel, I'm going to turn it over to you and go for it.
Thank you, Kevin, and good morning, everybody. Really appreciate AAED putting on this series and really feel honored in being asked to participate. Just to jump right into it, let me just get my poll off my screen. And Kelly, I got it. Carrie, you be operating the slides?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Well, as you can see, Joel Millman, I'm the Workforce Director within our Pinal County Economic and Workforce Development Department. And just to emphasize the relationship between workforce and economic development, we merged both efforts into and created this department that was actually just created in March of this year. So Tim Knavel, who's the Economic Development Director for Pinal County, is the overarching director of this department, but we work side by side coordinating some of these economic and workforce development efforts that I'll touch on throughout this presentation. But next slide, please, Carrie. What we see as workforce development, I know Kevin touched on it, and I try to look up, what is this thing called workforce development? 10 years ago or so, or even more recently, I don't know if anybody goes to college and gets a degree in workforce development, but it's kind of a bunch of us around touch on it every day. I found one definition from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis that even admitted that it's difficult to gain consensus on what workforce development means, but that each user has their own definition depending on what perspective they come from. Education and social service agencies may approach workforce development from an individual perspective, helping individuals make those transformational changes and to align with employment opportunities and careers. Employers in the business community may look at more from an organizational perspective and more of a supply and labor market, labor needs for their own sustainability. But at the end of the day, from a workforce development perspective, and I'm going to be presenting to you information just from our Pinal County perspective here, but we see workforce development is really filling that gap. At the end of the day, we have individuals who are seeking employment or furthering their careers, and then we have the business community that are offering employment opportunities and career growth. And what workforce development is, combined with economic development and education resources, really is a plan to fill those gaps so the two sides can meet. It's really the bridge between those two sides of the equation. Next, Carrie, please. We didn't work on like some special signal to in Pinal, we try to put a picture of how does this thing work. And so what we look at is really a supply and demand equation here. We figure that, and what I'm telling you is probably not so unique, and this is going on all over the state and all over the country, but workforce development, for what we do, we have dual customers. We have the job seekers and the employer community. But in years past, the workforce system really focused on the needs of the job seeker. Somebody came in, they needed a job, say, hey, what's available in the community? What skills do you have? And we'll send you over and hopefully they like you and hire you. These days, we're not going by that model. What we're really doing is going to industry leaders, saying, what do you need from a skilled workforce? Then we'll turn around, and as Kevin mentioned, really us starting in the K through 12 system, and aligning those educational opportunities, planting the seeds for some of the students in the high schools, even in the elementary schools, we're starting to look at these days to see what we can do to start building a talent pipeline as early as possible. Getting with community partners. There's not one entity around that can do this amongst themselves. You need to partner. Then here in Pinal County, we partner and rely very heavily as the leader here at the Educational Institution of Central Arizona College, who's really a fantastic partner in this whole equation here. Responds to the needs of the community, puts together some training programs. And then really what we do is through Arizona at Work in Pinal County. Some of you may be familiar with Arizona at Work, which is the state brand for the public workforce system. Really provides an infrastructure for making all this happen. And other workforce development agencies really facilitate their talent that they have available and really run them through and then provide that linkage back into industry. And it's a constantly evolving equation here. We're never static at all. As we said, as Kevin mentioned, there's new technologies, new knowledge that's needed. And so we're constantly evaluating the needs of the community. Next slide, please. This is, we have a local workforce board. And for those of you who are on this, whatever county you're in, each county has a local workforce development board. And it's really, it's through the structure of the public workforce system, and it's comprised of at least 50% of business leaders in the community that represent in-demand occupations and industries. So if you're not familiar with them, you can go to arizonatwork.com and you can find your local workforce development board. Here in Pinal, we're going through some strategic planning and trying to make sense of what is this thing called a workforce development system. We mapped it out. And this in Pinal County is just really a depiction of just a fraction of what it represents. It may be hard to see on the screen here, but in essence, it's really starting with, in the upper left-hand corner, it starts with a board of supervisors who really set the vision and direction for the county from an economic development perspective. And then it's up to a lot of the core partners within the public workforce system to align their efforts to meet with the demand and the direction that is set by the county. And throughout this cycle here, you can see there's just a host of individual entities within what we'll call our community, which is Pinal County for our example here, that interact. And the key here, as Kevin mentioned, collaboration and coordination. There is not one entity that would have to fear about being supplanted by the efforts of another. There's really not enough, there's unlimited capacity that is needed to make all this work. And it really, alignment, I always talk in terms of alignment. It's really alignment of effort to make this work seamlessly, because at the end of the day, a business that is looking to locate within a community doesn't want to get wrapped up in like a picture like this. What they want to know is, do you have the talent and when can you get it to me? And behind the scenes, behind the magic curtain, all this is occurring. And a community really needs to start looking at this and looking forward, looking not only what's happening now, but obviously what's happening in the near and future. So this is just a picture of just to put this in perspective of really what it takes to create a workforce development system. And this is kind of the picture where we're going by here. And the next slide, please. And again, as far as alignment of effort, here in Pinal County, we operate our federal workforce program is dictated by the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, which provides this infrastructure. And so we have a county workforce development plan. The state has a workforce development plan, which is the Arizona Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act state plan. Our local workforce board has a strategic plan, which is playing off a combination of all the plans here. And obviously our county has a strategic plan. And then probably all the entities within the community have their own strategic plan. So you can see that there's a lot of alignment, a lot of intersections that occur in making this happen. And it's best, as best as possible, if you can align these, have kind of a central entity as best as possible to kind of herd all the cats and make it seamless to the community as best as possible. That's the challenge. Next slide, please. And just in summary here, one of the things we've come across in our travels in our workforce development system is the Center for Future of Arizona has established what are called these progress meters, and some of you may be familiar with these. We've incorporated these into our workforce development plan only for the fact that it should help us align and keep focused on really what it takes from an economic development perspective as well as a workforce development perspective. It takes all of these elements here from, obviously jobs and looking at the trends of industry and occupations coming to a local workforce area, education, obviously, what do you do with your young talent? And obviously you need health and resources to attract and infrastructure to attract economic development. And further, it's civic participation. Once somebody comes here, what opportunities are there for family members? Once the main recruited member of that family is engaged in employment, and then connected communities is to make sure that this is all in sync. And so we're going to we look forward to measuring these progress meters as it pertains to Pinal County, incorporating into our efforts. One thing they also do is provide a common platform for metrics. And if you go to the Centers for Future of Arizona and look on their progress meters, there are a host of measurements and metrics behind each of these elements. And most of them are available now and being measured down to the county level. Some are in progress, but they're ever evolving. And it's just again, some type of common language for everybody to look at to see how you're doing within your community. So in a nutshell, that's what I just wanted to kind of present to you. The relationship between economic development, workforce development, obviously we are joined at the hip. Here in Pinal County, I just wanted to emphasize that we admittedly do not have the full workforce for the billions of dollars of economic development that's in the planning stage right now. And so what we're doing now is reaching out and looking at a regional perspective, looking at our colleagues up in Maricopa, City of Phoenix, down in Pima County, looking at regional perspectives to how we can coordinate and coalesce and bring all this together for the better of that long stretch of community. So with that, I don't want to take up too much time here. We have other presenters, which I'm looking forward to hearing, and I'll be around to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Good morning. Are we ready for me to go?
Yes, floor is yours, Greg.
Thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and I think I could summarize my comments with just ditto to everything that Joel just said to you, except we're approaching it from a little bit younger perspective. I think a question somebody might even say, why is this guy here today? Why career technical education discussion from a high school standpoint and even young adult? We don't spend enough time in the educational structure and as our community and society really talking to people, and young people especially, about what is out there for you. What is your future? Often people still fall into that much maligned question. They're sitting at Thanksgiving, that's an upcoming holiday. So, young man, what are you going to do when you grow up? I challenge all of you after this discussion today to, as you run into some young people, ask them to clearly define for you what their family does for a living, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, to describe to you the job they do or the pathway that they've used to get where they're at today. There was a time in history when you could pretty much see what people did for a living. They were a farmer, they were a blacksmith, those kinds of things. You could kind of see it and you had an attraction to it or you didn't. Today, many young people just say, well, my parents work on computers. Well, what do they do? Well, I don't know. They work on computers. So I challenge you to start this conversation of how do we introduce career education? As Joel just clearly pointed out, I could have shown you several slides myself. This is about a skills gap. Employers coming to us saying, we got great young people out there, but they don't have the skills that we need. All of you in economic development come to us and say, we have employers interested in moving to the greater state of Arizona, but they're not sure we have the workforce that they want. We have partners in the energy industry who are very concerned because they recruit people from other states, knowing full well if the family is located somewhere else, if they're young without a family, often they last a few years and they, quote, go home. If they bring along a spouse and suddenly there are children in the picture, they want to go home. So employers are well aware of trying to recruit and maintain local talent. Again, some of you may be parents out there, grandparents. How many of you are interested in raising your children only to know that when they reach that certain point or graduate, they have to leave to have a good career? So why career and technical education? Because it's our duty to help young people see a pathway, to create their passion, to understand what the world of work is about, and if at all possible, give them entry-level skills to help begin to find their passion. So West-MEC is one of 14 career and technical education districts across the state of Arizona. Many of our CTEDs, career technical education districts, are very closely aligned with the local community college system. And in many cases, that's where these courses are offered. We at West-MEC, serving the greater North Maricopa and the entire western portion of Maricopa counties, partner with the Maricopa Community College System, the local universities such as Northern Arizona and ASU, etc. And we run our own centers as well, and support career and technical programs inside 48 traditional comprehensive high schools. Currently, West-MEC has over 40,000 high school students who are involved in career and technical classes each day. A day like today, 40,000 high school students across Western Maricopa County will touch some type of career technical program. That's helping everyone to close that skills gap, and that helps many students find their passion, but as well as the comprehensiveness of their education starts to make sense. Let me give you a great example. I often hear from people, Greg, we're so glad you're doing this because you know, not everyone's college material. I always find that a little disappointing because I'm not sure exactly in the end who and what decides what a person's material is, because many of you sitting there today probably would have never dreamed, as I would have never dreamed, that I would be where I am today. My goal was to become an auto mechanic or build houses. And here I am as a school superintendent. Many people said, well, you always said you weren't even going to college. I said, I had no intentions of going to college. I had other things I wanted to do, but my job is certainly related to those things. So our students come to us, interestingly enough, for all of you, over 60% of our students tell us when they come through the door that they have higher education aspirations. But what we find exciting is our students are prepared for entry-level positions when they leave. If there is a credential or certification available that is industry recognized, they're ready to earn or get that industry credential. And over 92% tell us they are interested in pursuing higher education or additional education in their field. For the first time, for many of these students, education has started to make sense for them. Students that have come to us interested in our aviation program from a technician standpoint, aviation mechanics, who are now at ASU in aviation engineering. They certainly didn't have that aspiration for themselves when they got to us, but everything began to make sense. So why CTE? It helps students see their passion. It helps them to begin to pursue something. It helps our communities connect students to local opportunities, feel that they have a future in their community, see a pathway, understand where they can go. I would sit here very comfortably today and tell you that all of our students that complete our programs that want a job can get a job because they now have a skill that people are willing to pay for. We have a very small adult division at West-MEC. It's a growing division. We're very proud of it. And at each one of our completion ceremonies, I tell those people, you now have a skill. You now have a skill. that people are willing to pay you for. You should never again be fearful of being unemployed because you have skills that are needed. We have all types of programs. Many people still don't fully understand the breadth of what CTE is, all the way from pharmacy technician, veterinary assistant, to some of our traditional things that you would think of in autos, diesel, construction, carpentry, plumbing, those things. Sports medicine, travel and tourism, culinary, many, 63 different pathways to be exact, to expose young people to, and then our adults as well. Welding is an extremely popular piece. Something that we're very proud of, 96% of our students that were looking for employment this past year are already employed. 92% have completed credentialing, even with the challenges of COVID and our schools being closed. We were able to bring students back this summer on a limited basis and issued over 400 certificates this summer to students who wanted to pursue that and become employed. So we're quite proud of these young people. Our students are being successful. Our local employers are very pleased with the quality of these students coming out and their desire to continue their education and wanting to work while they do that. We very much have expressed and shared with young people that this is a way to work their way through school, and they don't necessarily have to have this huge debt hanging over their head by going straight off to a higher institution. So there's many reasons for career and technical education. As Joel showed us clearly in his slides, partnering within the community, partnering with economic development, keeping our people local, which is where they want to be, or at least within our state to help our state flourish, and to help attract appropriate businesses to our communities, because that we can provide the workforce at all levels, from entry level to far advanced. So Arizona is on the move. It's a very exciting time. We have a lot of what's called dual enrollment. Some of you may think, okay, they get some college credit, but I'm going to give you one that most people don't think about. Our diesel technology program is dual credit with Yavapai Community College. And by the time our students complete our diesel program, they're well on their way to an AAT degree with Yavapai Community College if they so choose. Our aviation students could earn up to 29 credits at Embry-Riddle University. We have some outstanding partnerships with NAU. These are in the books. There's not something we're dreaming about, but we call them 90-30 programs. By the time they're done with us and our community college partners, for 30 additional credits, they can earn their degree through Northern Arizona University. Sky's the limit with students who participate in career and technical education. Our students have a 98% high school graduation rate, far exceeding the statewide average of students who are just generally going to high school. And we think we are part of the solution to economic development and economic prosperity. Our mission and our vision is to create students who know how to grow with the future and become economically independent and participators in our economy. So I thank you for this few minutes and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Greg. So now our next presenter is Russ Yelton. Russ, you have the floor.
Thank you, Joel, Greg, great presentations. I'm going to approach this a little bit differently and talk about a couple different projects where workforce development is critical. One urban, one rural, and then another program that's being launched that's going to be statewide to try and address a lot of what Joel and Greg were discussing. Next slide, please. So our firm works with a lot of groups, whether it's on the educational side, economic development, a lot of work around business incubators. A lot of communities are working on those accelerators, trying to get specific industries in, but it requires that training and that workforce identification for them. And the partnerships that both of the previous presenters talked about are critical to making all of this work together. So next slide, please. So some examples of this would be CEI, Gateway Community College, an 18,000 square foot facility that they decided to really focus on life science, medical device, all of that. One of the things that they discovered very quickly was the pipeline of workers that are required. had them create another program that I'll talk about at the end of this. Another good example is NASET in Flagstaff, Northern Arizona Center for Entrepreneurship and Technology, getting into more rural areas of the state, those working with your universities, your community colleges, your high schools, all the way down is critically important. And then others such as Perimeter 83 at the University of Advancing Technology that's going to focus more on tech commercialization, but again, promoting that advanced workforce, whether it's artificial intelligence or other virtual reality or other areas that are needed. Other examples of this would be Native American Incubation Network that was formed up with some of the tribes, with the Navajo and White Mountain Apache, identifying a whole different type of workforce down to the city of Maricopa Center for Entrepreneurship that focused on home-based businesses and a very different skill set. Next slide, please. So an urban example of this right now that's being worked on is a former Kmart building. With COVID and everything that's happening, we know we're starting to see a lot of commercial real estate that's going vacant. In this particular community, they were very adamant that they didn't want this building to be turned into just another storage center or shipping center. They really wanted to do something that was different. And fortunately for them, both the building owner and the city of Phoenix took a lot of interest in this and trying to figure out how to help a community here that is typically lower to moderate income, blue collar, high Hispanic, and try and help them within that community. Next slide, please. So the initial concept that they came up with was a food innovation center. We know about 40% of restaurant workers have lost their jobs. There's been reductions. We can't go in and eat like we used to, but they wanted to take it further, look at technical labs, research, and what type of a workforce would it take for that into food production and even entrepreneurship to produce products to go into not only restaurants, but grocery stores and do demonstrations with this as well. So they started really looking at food and the entire center for that. Next slide, please. But then the discussion really went to what was the greater community need. Certainly we need jobs for food workers, that's true, and we need to support those entrepreneurs, but what are the larger community needs? They started to identify educational needs and what they felt were gaps and trying to put together a particular program that would have a greater impact beyond food. So talking with a lot of partners, I'll discuss briefly in a second, to look at more of the trade programs, technology, small business development, and how did they use all of those partnerships to create a comprehensive program to serve the entire population. Next slide, please. So possible community partners, started with the community college. Certainly we started talking around food. So with a lot of these different partners, you'll see nutrition, meat cutting, those things. But as we held meetings within the communities, not only educational leaders, but community members themselves, they really wanted to look at a larger vision of something that they could take not only the youth, but also those that need to be retrained. And as Greg said earlier, who knows that you're not college material? You start with a trade, you get an associate's degree, and really kind of move forward. So we started having those discussions with the community college, NAU, WestMec, it's represented here, Grand Canyon, Chicanos por la Casa, as well as ASU, trying to figure out how do we bring all this together. The nice thing about these particular community partners is they're already doing workforce development. They're already doing economic development. They're already partnering together. So it was an opportunity to bring these groups together for this. Next slide, please. So what we ended up recommending was a workforce training center, bringing in hopefully WestMac, as well as the community college and ASU and some of the other partners under one roof. So we start to give people within the community a career path, tying that back to the businesses that we want in the community that we're trying to grow, retrain that existing workforce that again has been impacted by COVID, and expand those youth educational opportunities. One of the great things is working with the other school superintendents, as was mentioned earlier, all the way down to first grade. We start early and give them an idea of where they can go and utilize those strong existing community partnerships and existing collaborations that exist. We're hopeful that this project will take a hold later this year with construction, and early next year even include an incubator to bring in further business development. Next slide, please. So going to totally different part of the state, all the way up to St. John's, Arizona. If you don't know where St. John's is, you go to Show Low and you keep driving another 45 minutes. Keep going. Small town, about 3,500 in a population. And if you follow what's happening up there, they're losing the coal plants. 500 plus direct jobs, lots of indirect jobs, no four-year universities, lack of medical facilities. If you live in St. John's, you drive 45 minutes to a grocery store, no OB/GYN. So one of the things that they really wanted to try and figure out, not only bringing in jobs through workforce development, but how could they focus on medical and rural health with that. Next slide, please. So they started with some USDA grants focused, as I mentioned, on the rural medical research, looking at a wide variety of areas, agricultural, water technologies, hemp, and, how are they going to retrain these workers? How are they going to get new families to come up to this small part of the state? And this really impacts not only St. John's, but the entire county of Apache. Apache is one of the poorest counties in the United States. Two recent reports suggested that 42.5% of children are malnourished within these. So how can they use workforce development to create the types of jobs to create better opportunities for them? Next slide, please. So with this, they started reaching out, looking at university partnerships, starting with U of A. Started out talking about nutrition, and then because of the large number of ranches up there, they started talking about beef processing, some of the advanced materials and things from some of the new companies coming in. Certainly research in the vet school. Started talking with NAU on nursing and how do they get their students into that. And during that discussion, they realized that at the high school, they did not have some of the chemistry and biology classes, nor did they have the labs that were required. So with a partnership with ASU, they will determine a way to have those classes actually online through a strategic partnership to channel them into that particular career opportunity. And then also because of the vet school at U of A, partnering with Midwestern University on animal clinical trials. So if you look at all this and you think, how are you going to do this in 3,500, population? There's a couple different ways to get there. We chose a pretty particular path. Next slide, please. So with that, they started bringing in some new businesses. I mentioned advanced materials. So the concrete plant, interestingly enough, wanted to do research around hempcrete and putting hemp in their concrete to make it stronger and to teach their workers how to produce this product in conjunction with U of A. Metal manufacturing as well. So partnering here with the Arizona Commerce Authority, not only for training dollars, but also those university partnerships. Currently looking at installing computer training lab and classrooms in the back of the city hall to facilitate this. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the Commerce Authority also came in because if you're going to do workforce development, it's very hard to do that without broadband. So they were awarded a broadband feasibility study grant. Then bringing in the EDA, currently they're applying for design and engineering grant to be shovel ready to get their broadband up, which would be critical to bringing in those businesses and delivering on those educational opportunities. Next slide, please. So the last one I want to talk about briefly here is LabForce. And I mentioned at CEI, as they were putting out these life science companies, they realized that they needed a better way to train that workforce. So it's a statewide initiative starting in the biotech and life science industries. It's funded by the Maricopa Community College System, Prop 301, $5 million committed. So it's committed to workforce development, professional development, and that pipeline development that's been discussed earlier. Next slide, please. So the idea here is a hybrid, and this actually was developed before COVID, so it was good forward thinking, online and in person to fit busy schedules. So looking at life sciences, your clinical, your lab skills, compliance, and even entrepreneurship because it's coming out of an incubator. Next slide, please. So, sorry, next slide, please. So the physical location will be on the Wexford Science and Technology Building on the downtown biomedical campus. The idea here was to have some of those hands-on skills that you have to have in the training rooms, workshops, collaboration areas, and even a pitch pit as we bring the companies in looking to get capital to get that workforce on board that they need. Next slide, please. So the curriculum here initially is going to be about 300 online courses, multiple providers, clinical, quality, regulatory, and compliance, not only for workers that are new, but workers that need their skills upgraded. Next slide, please. The backbone of this is a learning management system that's currently used by the Department of Defense that'll allow everything from registration, administration, tracking, reporting, skills gap analysis, and even has built in an internship tracking program so that we can get our youth in the companies in good programs where we can measure the outcomes. Next slide, please. It'll be deployed Q1 of next year. Again, this is a statewide program, facility opening in January, and they're already starting to diversify into other industries. Aerospace is the next industry that they're starting to look at. And also they have the ability to put individual company existing trainings within the system. It's also a tool for economic developers and communities to use, not only for the companies they have now, but also as a recruitment tool as well. Last slide. All right, and with that, I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russ. Greg and Joel, appreciate the information. So we're going to start into some Q&A. And again, if you have questions, just please drop them into the chat room, and we'll get to those as we can. But before we start that, we have one more polling question for you. And it is, what are some of the major hurdles for the Arizona workforce pipeline? And you can see that popped up there on your screen. If you'll take a minute to go ahead and cast your vote, we would appreciate that. Okay, so there are a couple that posted into the chat room already, and I'll throw that out there for any of our panelists who wants to kind of jump in. So one question is, how do you manage the training with a rapidly changing work environment? Who would like to jump on that one? Joel?
Kevin, this is either way.
Go ahead, Greg.
For some reason, I can't get back to my video. Well, just real quickly, we state the question again, Kevin.
Yeah, it's how do you manage a training program in such a rapidly changing work environment?
Well, it's not easy, but we have, for every program, we have an industry advisory commission or panel. We are constant, we meet with them 3 times a year, and we can be nimble enough, okay, what needs to be dropped, what needs to be added. We have to keep in mind that we're trying to do a broad-based approach. You can't get so specific that they're going to spend the entire semester learning how to operate one machine for one specific company. That sometimes comes up, but we really do try to look at the broader perspective through industry input and what is required by the industry that's out there in their credential or something like that specifically says, here's the skills you need to perform this job.
Yep. All right. Joel, did you want to add anything? Or?
Yeah, I mean, just feeding off of that, one of the things that we look at here, at least in Pinal County, and again, not unique, but just my hometown, give you as an example, is I think it's important, like Greg just mentioned, is to sit down with industry and stay on top of it, try to stay ahead of it. And that's where really the linkage between the economic development efforts and workforce. I know economic development, looks at folks as businesses as they're looking to relocate, and what are the skill sets that are necessary. Those, always want an indication of what type of workforce do you have. Not every new locate is going to open up tomorrow. There's usually a little bit of a lead time. And one thing we're looking at least in Pinal with our partners in Casa Grande and other communities here, is the actual, the skill set and actual occupations that company is looking to bring to the community. And it gives us enough of an opportunity to start building up an inventory or get with our training partners and institutions. If we don't have it now, if nothing's available now, can something be developed? And again, it is timing, because you want to develop real time as best as possible to be available when that workforce is going to be actually needed. And so it's a changing environment too. One of the things too is the employer's needs. I think they have to really analyze what actual set skills and training is necessary not everybody needs it was mentioned, a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree. There are more certificate type programs, short term, and then stepping stone and building upon those skill sets as an employee progresses in their career.
Thank you. So real quick, I think Carrie has the results of our second poll. Aha. As you can see, folks, you can see that there, that, kind of evenly split across the board, it looks like, but obviously the access and cost of college is probably a major hurdle. And I think that that's probably self-evident. Kind of picking up on another question that kind of came through the chat room. And I guess it's addressing, and I think all of you all can probably weigh in on this, is it's one thing for people getting skill sets and technical things, but obviously, and we hear this quite a bit as economic developers and as folks in your industry too, the soft skills. What is happening, or how are we as a state, and with these programs that you all doing, how are we addressing the soft skills that it seems a lot of workers seem to lack right now?
I'll jump in for a second. I can tell you with LabForce, one of the number one skills that we heard was critical thinking across the board. It doesn't matter where we went in the state. They had to be able to critically think, decipher information, and be able to react. And so that is something I didn't mention in my presentation. The soft skills component is in there for that exact reason. But I think you're going to, Joel and Greg, jump in here, but you're going to hear this across all the industries. They need to show up to work on time, have a good work ethic. I mean, it really hasn't changed.
And Kevin, I'll just chime in here. Thanks, Russ. Is that as a statewide effort, and one of the efforts that was created through federal workforce funding is called the Arizona Career Readiness Credential. And that is statewide, and what that credential allows is it's specifically to address this issue. It's a series of critical and analytical and social adaptability skill sets that have been identified and categorized amongst thousands of occupations. So an individual employer, when they advertise for a certain position, can indicate the level of the credential. They come in either bronze, silver, gold, or platinum, and they could indicate the level of that they would like to recruit for. Through the Arizona at Work network, those individuals who are applying for those positions can test and see what level they're in. And if they don't meet the level that that employer is looking for, then we can link them up with some remediation so they can achieve those skills. And so that's one statewide effort that should be available to all employers. Anybody that's interested, I got it right here, it's acrc.az.gov, and you can learn more about it there.
Yeah, maybe if you could drop that link.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Yeah.
That would be good. And Greg, I guess, when you're seeing the kids coming to you, you're kind of the last hurdle for them before they are thrown out into the workforce. So how do you kind of get into the soft skills awareness for the high school kids?
This subject is probably number one. I agree with all of you. It comes up everywhere by everybody. And it always makes me smile when they say, look, we'll train them. Just get me somebody that shows up on time, dresses, can speak. I always kind of say, is that really what you mean? Of course it's not. They want both of those worlds. We do it. We work at it every single day. We use a lot of it through the career and technical student organizations. DECA, FBLA, FFA, HOSA, Skills USA, those professional organizations. We have very specific educational opportunities for these skills. Our absenteeism policies are different than the regular high schools. They're much more restrictive. They have to wear a uniform every day. They have to be on time. They have to practice these skills. They have to practice greeting people. All of our work, I shouldn't say all, a lot of our work is done in project-based environments where you're working with teams. We work at this every single day at both our secondary and post-secondary division. We know it's important. We probably don't sell that portion of it enough because at the end of the day, really everybody wants both. And it's very much a critical piece of our plan And when we show our slides of how it works in our program, that leadership development is what we call it, professional skills. Soft skills always kind of make it sound secondary. We all know what we're talking about, but we choose to use professional skills and leadership skills, team development, those kinds of things. We're working it every day. And our work in the elementary schools, while we're not as deep in that, it begins with the same thing: team development, team projects, how to work together, how to get up and talk about your project, or whatever it was that we had you develop. It is vital. We get it. We're working at it every day, but it is a challenge. As for everything I said earlier, we had a student walk into an employer who reached out to me yesterday who told her, nobody ever told me how to get a job. It just makes me want to crawl into a hole, because we spend hours and hours and hours, but somehow his message to the employer was, no, Westmec didn't tell me how to do anything. So, you can lead the proverbial horse, but sometimes it doesn't always gallop with you. So we're working at it. And folks out there today, from the educational side, we get it. It's not something we put in the back corner. We work with our teachers. We have specific professional development for our teachers on how to work with students on these skills. So it's vital to us.
I think that's the predominant issue today, that the person who can solve that problem will be able to retire a very rich person if they monetize that solution. So thank you for that panel, for your things. Real quick, Russ, there was a specific question for you about the St. John's and the Hempcrete and others. The ones you talked about, are those a reality? Are they still being looked at? And are there other things kind of in the pipeline for that community?
Sure, yeah, those are all on the ground. They are all there. They are hiring. And the workforce skills is, a thing we're struggling with. And that soft skills, the thing we just discussed, even at the adult level. The hemp company had said recently, they'll look at convicted felons, they're getting them back into the workforce. They don't care if they've got the right skills. There are some other projects working on up there around water and agriculture as well. But we're happy that those jobs are there and being created.
Good. Well, anecdotally, I'll share with the panel and the group. I used to work in a rural county in North Carolina, and we were trying to recruit some companies in, and I had assumed they were looking for a certain type of skill set and stuff. And I said, well, we have a lot of farmers, and not a high degree of education and stuff. And the guy looked at me, this German guy, and said, we like rural communities. He says, because guess what? They may not have an education, but if their tractor breaks down, they know how to fix it. If something goes wrong, they know how to fix it. So I think that's always been kind of the challenge, especially for, I think, displaced workers that are a little bit older, that, well, I've always been doing this. I don't know how to do that. And finding those transferable skills, I think, is why we have this infrastructure that all of you all represent, that there is opportunities that you can do a second career and base it on some of the basic skills that you've had with that first job. So it's good to hear what we're doing here. And I think that will lead into, I think we got time maybe for about one more that everyone can weigh in on. And I'm kind of a futurist. I like to look forward to things and learn what we're doing now to see what we can do. But if all three of you can pull out your crystal ball and say, what are the new tools that you need to help, that would be helpful for Arizona to advance our economy for the next 15 years? And of course, crystal ball and unlimited budget. And let's start with Russ, if you can lead us off on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think we need to educate our workforce that they're lifelong learners. Whether you're getting a certificate, a degree, everything's changing so fast now. And so, I really like companies that focus on, individual professional development plans for all employees across the board, because we should always be learning. And if we instill that early and it's constant, I think that will put us ahead.
Awesome. I agree. And that was something I'm glad you mentioned, because that to me is a buzzword we need to keep hounding on people, is lifelong learning, that no matter where you are in your career and your job, I mean, you're always going to get new skills, and that's good. So Greg, what would be your new tool to help advance what you're doing for the next 15 years?
Thank you, Kevin. And just real quick, I see a question here about how much is a problem is the current level of funding for K-12. It's a huge problem. And for CTEDs, specifically Westmec was cut by 42%. We've been restored back between 25 and 28. And then when you figure inflation in there, you got to take it down some. So it sounds good that they keep saying they're giving us all this money. We are struggling, people. And this effort, as you know, in the upcoming election, just in a few weeks, with communities that are very, very much lobbying to vote against overrides and bonds, it's not going to help education. Kevin, specifically to this question, what we need in CTE is dedicated partnerships, that it's not based on Kevin or Joel or Jim or Paul, and when they change positions or they leave the company, suddenly our connection is gone because they believed in it, but it's not a company thing. If we want to move education, the private sector and even the public sector from a workplace standpoint, though, has got to get in bed with us, and we have got to get in bed with you. And there has to be real partnerships, not just talk. And I know you could point fingers at us as well, and I agree. As educators, we don't always follow through so well. But you know, when it comes time for internships, it has to happen. When it comes time for people to come and help us talk to students or even show students how to use particular pieces of equipment, it's got to happen. We routinely set up examples like that. For this week, we've got 2 people scheduled to come in and show us how to do X, because it's not an area of expertise for our teacher. And that morning, they always seem to call and say, we've had a crisis. We have to take care of our business. Sorry, we're not going to make it. Then what do we do?
Yeah.
That's just a small, tiny example. But for me, is the other side of the world has to say education is important to the success of our industry, our community, our country, and the global economy. It's the secret to everything. We've all got to be working together. That's my statement.
Very well said. Joel, you got a quick...
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just briefly is to building on what Greg just said, is that from an economic development standpoint, when that initial contact is made with a potential business attraction effort, as soon as possible, at least the economic development from that perspective, is make that connection, build those strong relationships with your workforce development representative, whoever that may be, and have them at the table with you as early on in the process. That attraction may not come to fruition for maybe 3 to 5 years, but believe me, it could take that long to get your workforce prepared for when they open their doors.
Thank you very much. And I've always said when you do land, and that's, you know, I am a practitioner of economic development, have been for 25 years, is that companies, when they're looking at your community, are making 20-year decisions, investment decisions. So they are looking at your preschool, how far back are you reaching to start touching those kids? Because they'll be potential employers. And, you know, I appreciate everyone who kind of joined us here, and I'll leave those who are elected officials on here with a little bit of pearl of wisdom, is that hopefully you're learning that everything is connected, and what all of us really need are champions. We all need champions at the elected level who understand this isn't a partisan issue. It's not anything. It's about moving the state forward, growing your economy, and stabilizing your jurisdiction. So it's really good, really heartwarming for me that we have so many participants here who are interested in economic development and in workforce development. And hopefully you left today with a few pearls of wisdom that you can now deploy when you get back to your communities. But thank you again, Joel, Greg, Russ, and Carrie for putting this together, as well as Carla. You guys, this was an amazing hour. It seems like it was only 10 minutes because I really, really enjoyed the back and forth. But Carrie, I'll turn it over to you if you have any parting words for us.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you to all our speakers as well. This is really interesting and great information. We will be skipping next Thursday, and we will reconvene again on October 8th, where our discussion will be about selling Arizona. We have a panel lined up for that, so I hope you'll join us for that. Again, thank you so much to everybody, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.